Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over some severe weather which is going to be taking place in the central plains, as well as some drought relief for the west, and then also those two tropical disturbances which are out in the southeastern or the eastern Atlantic. We're going to be covering all of that and more, giving you updates on what you need to know as well in today's video, so make sure you are staying tuned all the way until the end so you don't miss any of the information in today's video. So here's what the current National Weather Service page looks like. As you can see, we have some excessive heat watches in that dark red color for much of the northwest. We have a very big high pressure which is just sitting up over Washington and British Columbia, and those areas are dealing with triple digit type of heat. So that's very unusual for areas in the Pacific Northwest. Usually they are one of the colder spots because they are right next to the Pacific Ocean, which tends to be a little bit cooler, and that usually can kind of cool them off. But because of the way the winds are working, they're coming from inland instead of offshore. We're gonna have real heat over these areas, and we're gonna be able to get up into the upper 90s, even above 100 in many of these areas, even if you live fairly close to the coast. So we have those excessive heat watches in the dark red, excessive heat warnings in that kind of purple color for parts of Oregon and California, as well as a little bit of Washington. We have some red flag warnings for fire danger also scattered throughout much of the western United States, and then we have heat advisories in through parts of Arkansas, Oklahoma, and also into Kansas, with a few flood watches in effect for northern Missouri and a little bit of Kansas as well. Yesterday we had a high temperature in Tucumari, New Mexico. Sorry if I mispronounced that. 109 degrees there, and Rio Grande Village, Texas, they got up to 109 degrees Fahrenheit. So those are the two tied high temperatures. The low temperatures in Bodie, California, where they got to 26 degrees Fahrenheit, and the highest rainfall report was in Midway, Florida, where they got 2.98 inches of rainfall yesterday. No snowfall reports yesterday as well. So taking a look first of all at that drought relief, we are going to be dealing with it mostly as you get from central Arizona and on eastward. So it's going to be mostly over this area where we should be able to erase a little bit of that drought, especially in the higher elevation regions where we'll get a little bit more precipitation. You go out into eastern California, Nevada, a little bit of eastern Oregon and Idaho as well, we might be dealing with a little bit of drought relief, but it's only going to be very minor, maybe up to 0.1 or 0.2 inches of rain. But again, it's nothing that's going to be able to really solve that drought issue. We also have a lot of drought still up for the northern plains, and just looking at a few statistics on the eastern side of your screen, or on the right hand side of your screen actually, you can see that we have 76.8 million acres of crops in the U.S. which are currently under drought issues. That's up 27.4% since last week, and also 27.4% since last month. We're up 0.68% since last week in the amount of the lower 48 that's actually covered in drought. We're currently at 38.5, and that's up 1.53% since last month. 94.4 million people in the United States in the lower 48 are currently under drought issues. That's up 0.59% since last week and up 2.24% since last month. And 31 states currently under some form of drought, which is up 2 states since last week and 3 states since last month. And you can see that mainly it's over the northern plains in that western part of the country. So it's really a widespread issue by this point. And luckily we are getting closer to that monsoon season in the southwest. So we will eventually be able to break up some of that drought. The main reason this actually happened was because we had a really disappointing winter in the southwest in terms of snowfall, where we really had close to nothing, so we didn't get any of that kind of melting down and flowing through the streams and kind of just moving throughout the state. Instead, we just got pretty much just a dry, arid type of environment, and we haven't been able to get anything consistently going since then. So finally, we will be getting a little bit of rainfall this week. It won't be a ton, but definitely enough to help out just a little bit. Looking at the tropics now, you can see that we have two areas. Since yesterday, we have this new orange area which has a 40% chance of developing, and it's a rather long area. It goes and starts from just off of the coast of Africa, and it moves all the way close to the Caribbean. So it's a fairly wide area where we could be dealing with a little bit of tropical development. We're going to have to see if this plume of Saharan dust, which is sitting right over here by this point, can move out of the way in time, or at least break up. It doesn't look like that'll happen. So once it moves into this area, it might be able to break up a little bit, and it might be able to weaken. We have a 10% chance of development, I believe, in this yellow region right here, which is about to cross over into the Caribbean. And you can see really not a lot of potential with that. It's over a very dry atmosphere in that area because we have a plume of Saharan dust right over this system. So it looks like that one will break apart, or at least will become very, very weak over the next couple of days. Taking a look at the satellite imagery, you can see that that weaker storm, it's barely holding on right now. You can see the Saharan dust, which is just kind of all around it and encompassing it. So this system is going to try and move out to the west. It might be able to outpace the Saharan dust and move out in time to kind of reform. If it is able to hold together and form back up over the southern Caribbean, it does have a fairly high chance of developing, just because of how good that environment is for tropical development. We have high OHC, we have really high ocean temperatures, so everything is really good and favorable in the area. No Saharan dust in through the Caribbean. It's that area just east of there, which is kind of blocking all of these storms and blockading all of them from actually moving into that favorable environment. You can also see that we have another area of Saharan dust, which is probably gonna move right into that same area and prevent this next system from really developing. Although as of right now, you can see it is developing to the south of there, so it is managing to kind of maneuver its way around there. We'll have to see how these Saharan dust plumes kind of move around, and that'll be a big factor into this. If this can just move out of the way or break apart a little bit, then maybe we can get a little bit of development. And this one does look fairly decent right now. If we didn't have the Saharan dust in the way just east of the Caribbean, I would be saying this could potentially become a hurricane, maybe a category 1 or category 2 based on its path. But right now it doesn't look like too likely if it can't make it through that Saharan dust area. So we're gonna have to see what happens with that. We still have a few days before that becomes a real issue. Looking at the radar here for the severe weather, you can see that we have some of these storms really starting to get going, and you might think that this is the bigger severe weather event. The severe weather is already underway, but to be honest, we are only getting started. We have another round that looks very similar but a little bit stronger to this one that's going to be taking place this afternoon, and we're going to start to time this out for you guys in a little bit. You can see that as of right now, as of when I'm recording this, and right now it's 10:11 a.m. Eastern time, so that would be 9:11 a.m. Central time, and you can see that we have this line of storms which is going from northwestern Illinois, just kind of maneuvering its way down into west central Missouri. We have steady rainfall to the north, and to the south, that's where we're getting our convective line of storms. We're not dealing with a huge amount of impacts out of it right now. We're not dealing with anything in terms of tornadoes or anything like that. Maybe a little bit of hail and strong winds, but we haven't gotten any real major reports. I think later tonight is when we'll get probably the more severe batch of these storms. If we look at the Storm Prediction Center page, they still have that enhanced risk up in parts of Nebraska, Kansas, and Missouri. Maybe that they extended a little bit, although I think it probably will stay the same unless something drastic changes within the models. This would be for today, mainly for tonight, and you can see that those same areas that are currently getting impacted with storms are going to get impacted once again. We have another slight risk which goes from Wisconsin down into Illinois and then all the way far enough west into parts of Colorado, Kansas, and Nebraska. So we have a little bit of a kind of a upside down L shape in terms of the slight risk for today, and then we have a wider area of marginal risk for today as well. Looking at the HRRR model, this is the high resolution rapid refresh model, and this goes out every single hour, so it's a really good model to use when you're right on the brink of these storms developing, because it gets the latest radar information and then just kind of simulates that out a little bit further out. So this would be by 11 a.m. Central time today, and you can see that it's expecting these storms to break apart a little bit and just to become mainly a plain rain by that point. Then as we're going to around 2 p.m. Central time, you are still dealing with most of these storms breaking apart, although you don't want to kind of count out these storms in Illinois, maybe a few storms developing up in Wisconsin. That's why they have that slight risk in through there. Your real main batch of storms is actually coming out of this right here in eastern Nebraska, so watch out for that area in eastern Nebraska. You can see that that moves to the southeast, and you're now starting to see some areas of purple and red pop up on your screen indicating heavy rainfall from severe weather. and that's gonna again kind of spread out a little bit, and it's gonna become more of a big line and cluster of these storms. So moving on a little bit more, you can see that by right around 8 p.m. Central Time, we have another line of storms developing into southern Iowa and also southern Nebraska. So it is starting to form quite well, and these are gonna just move to the south and kind of gain energy as they do so. So moving on a little bit further on, here would be by 11 p.m., and you can see this line of storms looks really convective by this point. So we're dealing with a lot of rainfall and definitely some strong winds. We could even have a few gusts up near 80 or 90 miles per hour in a few areas, especially in eastern Nebraska, southern Iowa, eastern Kansas, northern Missouri, because of how much CAPE we have in the atmosphere. Even though the CAPE isn't really too significant, just because we have dew points, which by the way in this area are going to be up near 77, 78, which is really, really high. We have high temperatures, which are going to be near 84 or 85, which is decent enough. And just all these factors coming together, mixed in with high wind shear throughout the atmosphere as well, could create a little bit of hail. And we are dealing with maybe hail size right around 1.5 inches in a few of these, according to a few of these models. We're going to show you those models in just a little bit. Through central Illinois, down through northern Missouri, southern Iowa, and eastern Nebraska, we're dealing with that line of storms that's going to continue to move to the south. It breaks up a little bit, but it is still a fairly big cluster of these storms in through central Illinois and also northern Missouri. So these are fairly intense by this point. Also, we're dealing with a little bit of rain, maybe up near Lake Michigan, so we might have to deal with something throughout that area. We're gonna have to continue to watch that. That looks like mostly a localized type of event that could pop up on the radar, mostly a hit or miss type of thing. So definitely just want to keep on watching the radar to figure out if that is actually going to happen. And then by 5 in the morning tomorrow, Central Time, you can see that we have over Missouri and Illinois. That line of storms is still heading to the south, but it is continuing to break apart. And then it's continuing to move further to the south, and it is eventually breaking apart as it is doing so. Looking at these high temperatures, they are quite impressive over these areas, especially as you get into areas like Kansas and Oklahoma further to the south. So we have that area of warm air further to the south. Because that first round of storms is already going through, they will be a little bit lower in through this pocket in Iowa, Illinois, northern Missouri, but it is still enough to support some thunderstorms, especially as you get further to the southwest where we have high temperatures near 84 or 85, and then even you're going further to the south and you're dealing with high temperatures maybe approaching 90 degrees or even triple digits down through Kansas and Oklahoma as well. So as you get further to the south, of course, the high temperatures will get a little bit higher. If you look at the dew points, these are going to be probably one of the biggest factors in this, because we're dealing with dew points as the storm is forming. This would be around 5 p.m. Or actually 3 p.m. Central Time today, and you're dealing with dew points right as these storms are about to form, right around 76, 77, 75. So these are super high, and that's going to allow these storms to really develop in a very humid and moist atmosphere over these areas. So especially through eastern Kansas, southern Iowa, northern Missouri, these areas are going through a very favorable environment for severe weather. If we go to the CAPE values, the amount of energy in the atmosphere, you can see that we're dealing with about 4 to 5,000 joules per kilogram through parts of southern Nebraska and southern Iowa, as well as through much of Missouri and eastern Kansas. And this pocket of high amounts of CAPE is actually going to shift a little bit further to the east throughout the daytime, so it will be able to spread out through parts of Iowa and northern Missouri, so that could also help out a little bit more. So we have a fairly favorable environment either way you split it. If you look at the maximum wind gusts during this event, it's going to be really, really potent, especially through eastern Kansas and southern Nebraska. So we're dealing with, if you look at the top right hand part of your screen showing the max wind gust, 92.4 miles per hour. Now that is going to be, of course, a localized event. It's not over a broad, wide area, but if you can get into one of those clusters of storms, who knows, we could be dealing definitely with wind gusts 80, 85, maybe even approaching 90 miles per hour, and that would, of course, be a fairly short-lived type of event event. It's not going to be a sustained 30-minute, 90-mile-per-hour storm, but of course you could be dealing with maybe 1 or 2 wind gusts getting up near 85 or 90 miles per hour. That can blow down a bunch there if that does actually end up happening. So we're going to hope that it's a bit lower, but either way, it looks like we could be dealing with a few wind gusts above 70, maybe getting to 80 or 90 in a few of these spots. Even if you don't want to think about 90 miles per hour, even if that's on the high end, definitely 80 or 85 in a few isolated storms is a possibility. And looking at the maximum hail, you can see that we're looking at a max amount of 1.76 inches, which seems about right. I would say for a median average, it would be more around a half an inch to an inch and a quarter in terms of the hail size. And you can see that it's not too potent down through here in parts of Missouri, Illinois, Indiana. The main hail threat is going to be further to the west. That's mainly because we have a bit of a colder we have a bit of a colder air mass further up in the atmosphere that's allowing some hailstones to develop in those areas. It's a little bit too warm as you get to the south to actually have any hail develop, because of course hail forms from basically being a ball of ice further up in the atmosphere. So the fact that it is a little bit colder up in Nebraska, Iowa, and Kansas does help out with the hail. Also, we have higher amounts of wind shear in the atmosphere over those areas, so you can see that the hail is going to be more prevalent over western Iowa, eastern Nebraska especially, and also into eastern Kansas. Not to say that it can't happen in areas like Missouri and Illinois, however. So we are dealing with maybe some hailstones, maybe getting up near an inch and a quarter, inch and a half, even a little bit higher, depending on what exactly happens today. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.